Get in on Stanley Cup Finals action, Lightning versus Avalanche at Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook. Before the game starts, live in play, or one of our many prop bets. Doing it right since 1997, Sports Interaction makes it easy to deposit, play, and cash out. Join now and see all that sports betting has to offer. Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. That's sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. It's 19 plus. Please play responsibly. The world's most comfortable pants. Duer stands for natural performance and simplicity, and it's based in Vancouver. Designed with the belief that comfort, style, and function should complement each other rather than compete. This means a single pair of Duer pants can take you from the bike lane to the boardroom and out to dinner, all while maintaining a sense of effortless sophistication. You don't have to climb a mountain in Duer denim, but you could if you wanted to. Versatile wardrobe essentials made for all you do in a day, so you can spend less time getting ready and more time living life. And this is the best part. To get a $15 discount, use the promo code SDPN15. Again, to get a $15 discount, use the promo code SDPN15.
This is Agent Provocateur with Allan Walsh and Adam Wylde. Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook.
Welcome to another edition of Agent Provocateur. I'm Allan Walsh with Adam Wylde. How are you, Adam?
I'm great, Alan. How are you today?
Doing awesome. My daughter graduated from high school last week. We had all these friends and family in town, and they had all of their flights canceled when they were bugging out of town. But everybody has now safely made it home and back to work.
And you're almost an empty nester.
August 16th, I will officially have 2 kids in university and be officially an empty nester. That's right.
But it's a good thing that you've got multiple kids that you're an agent to, right?
Well, that's the whole thing, right? I've got 50 kids.
That's right.
Yeah. And along those lines, why don't we introduce our guest this week, who was born and raised in Mississauga, Ontario. Adam, how do you like that transition? Was that good?
That was beautiful, actually. It was
right.
Professional.
Yeah. I'm learning. I'm learning. He played junior hockey in the OHL with Owen Sound and Guelph, drafted 52nd overall in the 2018 NHL entry draft by the Toronto Maple Leafs. Traded to the LA Kings with Carl Grundstrom and a first-round pick for defenseman Jake Muzzin. After 2 seasons in the AHL with the Ontario Reign, made his NHL debut this season and never looked back, registering 3 goals, 24 assists, 27 points in 64 games for an outstanding .42 points per game in his rookie season. He just finished, and the results were released on Tuesday, 4th in voting amongst defensemen for the NHL All-Rookie team. Let's give a big welcome to noted Allan Walsh client, Sean Durzi.
Yay! Welcome, Sean.
Thank you. Thank you for that intro. That was too kind.
He does a good intro, doesn't he?
That is a damn good intro.
Anything he missed on that resume, Sean, or do you think he got it all?
He probably gave me a little more than I deserve, but that's pretty. No, he was rock solid there. Good job.
That's part of my job, man. It's part of my job. So one of the things, Sean, and we've been working together now for a couple of years. And one of the things that stands out amongst many things with you is, you know, people, for example, LA Kings fans, see a young guy coming into the NHL as a rookie. And if they're not a real fan of the game and know every player's history, they have no idea what your backstory is to make your debut in the NHL and then become a regular in the NHL. And one of the things that is really fascinating about your backstory is all the adversity you faced and overcome to get to where you are. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think it's fascinating. You came into the OHL and you had a real good season your first year. But at that time, while the dream probably burned very deeply inside of you to become an NHL player, I don't know how many other people that first year watched you and said, that guy is a guaranteed surefire NHL player. So why don't you tell a little bit, tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. So it started, growing up, I loved hockey. Don't get me wrong. I loved it. And then as things got tougher, guys started growing, and this is in minor hockey. I kind of stayed, I was pretty small, and things kind of didn't go my way. Maybe my skills kind of fell behind, and, that kind of made my love for the game a little bit, kind of faltered a little bit. And I thought to myself, what happened? Like, I love this game so much. Like, now I'm like, didn't want to go to practice and this, that. And I got cut from a AAA team. And that was the first probably big stepping stone of adversity that I had in my life. And it's funny because I remember it like pretty clearly. I got cut, and I was on a team with all my friends, so it sucked. There was a new coach. He came in and he said I wasn't good enough. I ended up going down a level, and I kind of regained my love and my joy for hockey, and it kind of lit a fire that it's never gone out. And it's kind of to this day now, it's from that moment to now, it's my love for the game. It's uncomparable. Going to the OHL or playing AA, I went down. I regained my love for the game, and I started to get better. And I worked on myself, and I was motivated, and I wanted to get back to AAA. And I got that chance that for my OHL draft year. I ended up going through the year as, the seventh man in the beginning, and worked my way up to a 1-2 spot. I was playing a little more, and the draft came, and I was nervous, but trying to act like, whatever happens. But I knew I really wanted to get picked. And I was lucky enough for a team to take a chance on me in the 12th round. That team ended up being Owen Sound, and I wanted to do every single thing I could for the next 2 years I had to make the team, to show them that they made the right decision.
Right.
Came to camp. The first year, they said, you know what, why don't you go back to minor hockey, play another year, and we'll see what happens next year. So I came to camp, wanted to be a little stronger. I came in probably at the time the best shape of my life. Last cuts, I get called in for my meeting, and they tell me they want to sign me. And I looked at the roster, and they had 9 defensemen. And no smart person would, look at a team with 8 defensemen and say, I want to be the 9th. But, I knew this was my dream. Had a few years before my NHL draft, and I thought back to my minor hockey roots when I first hit that adversity, and how I regained those steps. And I started as a 7th man in AAA, and I worked my way up just by putting my head down and kind of going to work, and came back, and I made the decision, talked to my parents, and I said, I want to sign in the OHL. And I ended up signing as the 9th defenseman that year. Things went on, and I was kind of gutting my way to get into the lineup, just playing 4th line just to get on the second power play unit as a defenseman. And finally there's a spot that cleared up on D, and I was playing a little more on D, and I ended up being scratched for 20 games.
Oh.
And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I had a good year. I scored 10 goals. I had 16 points in 40 something games. And I thought, you know what? I could build off this. I know I could play on the power play. I did it for the second unit. And the next year was my NHL draft year. So I knew I had to kind of grind and kind of give myself a shot to get picked. That summer, I hit another pretty big step in adversity. I had something going on in my ankle, and I had no idea what was going on. And I go to doctors, and nobody knows what's wrong with it. And finally, I had a family friend who worked at a hospital, and his buddy was a foot and ankle specialist. And he kind of looked at it, and he said, you got what's called ostrigonum. It's an extra bone in your ankle, and I aggravated it training. So he said, the only way you can fix this is by getting it removed. And I said, because I tried physio the whole summer, and I ended up getting it removed in August, maybe not even a month before the season starts in the OHL.
Bad time to have surgery.
Yeah.
Terrible time to have surgery. So I missed the key moments in that summer for training. I ended up going to camp that year, missed camp, and I missed 8 games in my NHL draft year. I came back and I had a slow start to the beginning of the year, but after Christmas, things started to click a little bit. And I saw from a rookie who was getting scratched to playing every game since I was healthy and kind of getting some, points and making some good plays and kind of just, I remember it clicking in my head like, hey, I could do this. I could play in this league and I could be something special here. I ended up with 30 something points in that year. And, I was 30, whatever, something in the 30s. And it was the NHL draft. And I thought 30 something points in 60 games, over 0.5 per game. You know what? It's my NHL draft.
And you were ranked on the NHL Central Scouting list, and your name was out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you remember where the draft was that year?
Yeah, so it was in Chicago that year, and then we've talked about this, but yeah.
So, I've been doing this now, representing players for 27 years, and in the conversation over the NHL draft, I've always firmly believed if you're not expected to go in the top 3 rounds of the draft, the players and their families are better off to stay home and wait for the phone call.
Now,
Because
why is that?
when you sit at the draft, and I've been to the last 27 drafts, and you see players and families, suit and tie, 5th round, the knees start shaking up and down. And the thought, a lot of people go into the draft thinking, I'm going to get drafted. I'm okay with getting drafted late, but I'm going to get drafted. And you get into the 6th round and you start hearing names you've never heard before from different parts of Russia or Europe. And everybody's kind of like, huh, who is that guy? Never heard of him. And you get into the 7th round, and it is devastating to be sitting there, for many people, to be sitting there for an entire draft and seeing players going, and you get to the very end and you're not drafted. It's a terrible feeling. And Sean, you were at the draft and you weren't drafted.
Yeah.
Right. So what was that like for you and your family?
So the adversity that I faced throughout my career, I went from the first one I told you guys about, and then my first year in the OHL being scratched. It's obviously your first time when your team's playing, you're healthy and you're not playing. It's a weird feeling going through that, but each step of adversity on the way kind of had those defining moments. And I remember leading up to the draft, I was not planning on going. I knew I was ranked on Central Scouting, and I've talked to a few teams, and I thought maybe there was a chance, and I thought I should have been, especially with the second half I had and stuff. But anyways, 2 weeks before, we were on a family vacation in Florida, I want to say. And we're just going for a walk, and I kind of looked at my parents, and I was doing a lot of thinking, and I said, you know what? I want to go. I knew who I was at the time. I knew what I deserved. And at that moment, I thought about the worst situation and then the best situation. And I said, can I deal with the worst? And the worst is me going, not getting picked, going home, and, going through that whole situation. Mm-hmm. And the best was me getting picked. And I thought, if I got picked, I want to be there for it. And if I didn't, I've already thought about it. I know who I am. I know what I deserve. It's only going to motivate me even more. So going through those scenarios, I made the decision to go. I had a couple friends who got picked, and sitting there, and like you said, it's funny because it was the first round, and you see top few names go off the board, and you're like, they're that's what I thought was going to happen. And then you hear a kid from somewhere in Europe or somewhere in Russia get picked. You never heard his name. He has 0 goals and 2 assists, and he's in the top 15. And you're like, hold on, I might be in trouble here.
Right.
So I ended up sitting through, and the first round obviously was fun. And then I had a friend who got picked. And then the second day, in the beginning, you hear names and you know you're not going to go, but at the same time, you still think it's going to happen. You're like, maybe I get picked here. Finally, 5, 6, 7, they go quick. And I remember looking at my parents, and I had Suzuki was there with me. He got picked the day before, and my billet mom was there, and we're just sitting there, and I'm looking around, and my biggest worry wasn't myself. My biggest worry was what everyone else was feeling for me. I didn't want any pity. I didn't want any of that. It was going quick, 6th, 7th round. I got a text saying, from Florida at the time, saying they wanted me to come to camp. And I'm like, there's still 2 rounds left. But I think it goes so quick that teams already know and things are already set. So I didn't get picked. And that moment, sitting beside my parents, Suzuki, my billet mom was there. I knew from that moment I was going to do everything I could that summer, take every single experience that I gained throughout my whole entire career and put it to work. And
that could go either way. The way you were thinking at that moment is rare, because most people at that moment would be so devastated. They would be turned off by hockey. You naturally try to stay away from things that are painful. Mm-hmm. And when you're played your whole life, going towards the NHL draft, being drafted, and you're there and your name isn't called, that's a really tough thing to go through.
Yeah. So, and then I thought back to before the draft, I was thinking of the best case scenario and the worst case scenario. And before, it was me getting picked that day. But it ended up being the best case scenario for me was not getting picked that day. Because I looked beside me and I saw who was there supporting me, and I saw who was at home watching. And I thought, I'm going to put everything I can, not to prove these 32 teams. At the time, I thought every single team was stupid. And I was mad, and you have all these feelings and all that. But I wasn't focused on those teams because they didn't give a shit about me, quite frankly. Sorry for my language, but they didn't care about me. I wanted to prove the people who were sitting next to me for 7 rounds, the people who are at home watching, that they believe in the right guy, and the right guy is going to make it happen. So I kind of took that energy, and that's kind of where my mind switched. And that was the adversity that I gone through that kind of defined where I'm at and kind of defined those next few summers and those next few years of my life to kind of get where I am now.
Right. Now, you ended up going, just one more. You ended up going to a development camp that year.
Yeah.
Where did you go?
So I went to Florida, and then I went to Toronto right after.
Right. And what happened in Toronto's development camp?
I remember, there was a bunch of kids there, and we went through a bunch of games and drills, and at the end of it, they said, "Thanks for coming. We'll keep an eye on you. We'll keep in touch." And it was basically saying, "Thanks for showing up. Glad you came. Glad you gave us our guys a good tryout, and good luck the rest of the way." And it was fun.
Okay, Adam.
Well, okay. So I'm noticing a bit of a theme here, and I want to expand on it. So you went to the Panther camp and the Leaf camp, correct? Is that what you said? Yeah. So just so listeners like myself, you didn't just go to Florida and skate on a rink. You were at the Panthers development camp. You were at the Leafs development camp. So that makes sense. There's the theme that I'm seeing, and Allan, I want to ask you how rare this is. We're going to pretend like Sean's not here for a second. The mindset that a player needs to have, that a person in life needs to have when he's sitting there and he's watching everybody else get picked, some guy, different country, 0 goals, 2 assists in 7 games, Googling his name. I'm looking at this guy on Hockey DB. I've never heard of him. How many people have you encountered, Allan, with the mindset that Sean talked about there about, not being picked?
You have no idea how rare it is. And you find when players start playing in the NHL and start getting some steam behind them and their careers are progressing forward. I could think of several players who I represented. So I got to know them really well. I got to know their psychological makeup. I got to know how they deal with adversity. They have similarities, but I also know the much larger group of guys who got so discouraged when they came up against adversity that they gave up.
Right.
And you do everything you can to show them, look at what other people have gone through and look at how they dealt with setbacks, right? You're not the only guy to ever have a setback. And you can feel sorry for yourself and lick your wounds for 24 hours. But then it's about, I'm going to go back out there and I'm going to make a promise to myself that I'm going to be the best that I could be and I'm going to make it next time. You have to have that attitude in you. And there's much more. You find many more players who don't have that attitude than those that do. And those that do end up making it.
And Sean, I got to ask you, that mentality, where did you develop that? Did you read a book? Was it somebody that inspired you? How did you become that way?
To be quite honest with you, it's just from my experience. And that's something that, you kind of attach yourself as you grow up to people who have same interests and same ethics and same kind of motivation as you. And as along the way, you push each other, you push your friends, and that moment through the adversity I gained and through the experience, I kind of developed that mindset naturally. And then I mean, that's why everybody looks at adversity as, it's such a tough thing. And I feel like I'm never getting the bounces, but now kind of when adversity comes my way, I welcome it. And it's almost like it's, something that I'm used to and something that I know is going to help me grow and help me learn. It's kind of who I've become today. It's through adversity.
Yeah, it's amazing. So we'll pick up the thread again. I just had to talk. That mindset is so rare. I've rarely heard anyone talk like that. But we'll pick up the thread. So you go to the development camps. Allan, Sean, take it from there.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your next year and your next NHL draft experience.
Yeah. So, I'm lucky enough to have gone through 2 drafts and kind of seen both sides of the spectrum. But that summer, going back through, I kind of took everything and I was always a hard worker, but I even ramped it up to the point where it was a little bit insane, quite honest with you. It was crazy. Like just everything that I thought I couldn't do any more of, I was doing more of, and kind of pushed myself to the max. And I knew that, kind of rode on that feeling of sitting there at the draft and remember proving those who believe in me right. So I kind of went through that year, had a really good summer, came back the next year and came out with a bang, quite honestly with you. I was faster, stronger. Every aspect of my game was better. And I started the year, I think, with, I want to say over 2 points per game in my first 10 or something like that. It was, almost leading the league, and everyone's kind of looking around like, where did this guy come from? And that was a good feeling for me because I knew that I was there the entire time, and I knew that that's what could do. And that's what I was capable of, but it was nice to see that people were kind of realizing it. I missed a step. I actually went to the Islanders camp as well, and they told me I wasn't good enough as well. So after a great summer of training, at a great camp with the Islanders, I really thought I was playing the best hockey I could play at at that Islanders camp, they sent me home. So just a little bit more of kind of screw you, you're not good enough. But went through the year. As I went through the year, I kept up that. I didn't keep up the 2 points per game, obviously, but I kept up the pace of, I'm going to be not only just a player in this league, but a dominant player, a good player in this league. And the team was having success. I was doing well. And then I got hurt. And it sucked because of this. Like I said, it was nice to have everybody realize that, hey, this guy, where does this guy come from? And how's he doing this? But to have it happen at that time, especially knowing that I was eligible for the draft, kind of sucked, because a big part of the draft is consistency. Can you do it on a consistent basis? Can you do it for the whole season? And then there was obviously the questions of can he do it? I was doing interviews and stuff, and they would obviously mention that stuff and things like that. But I came back from injury, played a little longer, played some games, and then played a few games before the playoffs, and I didn't do anything. It was I think we had 3 games before the playoffs, and it was probably not my worst 3 games of my life, but I wasn't where I was before. And obviously it's not easy coming back from injury. Playoffs started that year, and I knew for me to make a statement, for me to come back and play the hockey that I had to show people I could play, and for the team to do well would be the best, not only for me, for the team, for, my career, for everything. Mm-hmm. We came back that year and we won the first round, and I was really happy with that. The team was playing well. Things started to click for me again. And we went to the second round against probably the best team in the country at the time, who was the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. And we went to 7 games, and I ended up having a great series and a great playoffs. We lost in 7, but I think it was 16 or 17 points in 11 games, I want to say. So it was good. I was feeling back to my normal self, and going into that summer, I knew obviously I had to make the decision again. And I thought, you know what, we did it once, why not go again? Except this time I was a little more confident that I was going to go in the draft.
So do you remember where the draft was in 2018?
Yeah, this draft was in Dallas now. So I was traveling the world, quite honestly, through a couple drafts.
So now you and your family head to Dallas. You go through the draft the first day, the first evening, which is the first round. Mm-hmm. And now you come back for day 2. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So you go through day 1 and you hear names being called again, and the same thing goes on. You don't know a few guys in the first round, which is a little bit surprising at the time, but you're like, you know what? Confident I'm going to get drafted. Whatever happens. Day 2 comes along. Wake up, a little bit more of a different feeling. I kind of was just almost like, where am I going to get drafted? And you don't know, there's that uncertainty now, but me and my family comes along. We sit back in the row, and names are getting called early in the second round. And, you get that bit of flashback of like, you know what, maybe I might not get picked. Right. It's because quite honestly, it's not traumatizing, but it's a pretty big experience for a kid to go to the draft and not get picked. You don't forget that. It's something you won't forget. So I'm sitting there and names are getting called, and I look at my parents and have a little laugh. I'm getting a little bit of a deja vu here, like some flashbacks. And then finally, to be there when my name was called was like just a weight lifted off my shoulders, like so much of that hard work. It was so nice to feel that kind of pay off a little, like not completely, but just that moment of satisfaction was well worth all those hours and that training and all that adversity I had to go through. Not only from that point, you kind of flash back to your whole career. That's right. A dream that you have. And and obviously it doesn't happen to everyone, but I was lucky enough for it to happen to me. And you don't sit back and relax too long, because then things ramp up after the draft. But for those 5 minutes of getting picked and walking down those steps, it's quite honestly, it's worth all of that hard work. So I was lucky enough to go through them both. I mean, I kind of have that mindset of learning from your experiences, and that day I got picked, it was another learning point for me. So it was awesome, and, well worth all that hard work.
Now, you got drafted by your hometown Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
Right. So you get drafted, you hear your name, and then you walk down the stairs and you walk onto the draft floor, and you're walking over to the Toronto Maple Leafs table. What was that like for you, being someone who grew up in the greater Toronto area? Yeah.
Maybe for guys who go the first time and they're a surefire pick, they're like, oh, please pick me. I want to go here. I want to go here. But at that point, sitting through about 8.5 rounds of NHL drafts, I don't even know if I knew who was on the board. I was just like, come on, just call my name. Somebody call my name.
Anywhere is good.
But realizing it, it got down. It was LA and then Toronto. LA picked it right before them. I remember seeing the Leafs and a quick thought, like, I've talked to these guys. Like, I could possibly go here. And then hearing my name was just the relief of, being picked, and then walking to the table and shaking these guys' hands and meeting out all the staff and stuff. You're like, oh my God, this is the Toronto Maple Leafs. So that was cool. Like, growing up watching that team. So that was a pretty cool experience for me.
Do you think the 7-game set against the Sioux Greyhounds helped the cause at all? I mean, I'm sure Kyle was watching.
Yeah, I'm sure. They have a lot of Sioux Greyhound stuff. So
no kidding. Yeah. That has to feel incredible. And do you remember your parents' reaction? Do you remember who was there with you? What do you even do after you get drafted?
Yeah, so I remember the first draft I went to, my biggest worry, not my biggest worry, but I told my mom, I said, whatever happens, or if I don't get picked, don't cry. I basically told her, don't cry. Like, I don't care if I don't get picked. Okay. Just don't cry. Hold in those tears. And then the second time, obviously, she couldn't help it. She was bawling her eyes out, and, just having my family there, everybody was just like so happy, couldn't believe it. And it was cool because I told you guys, sitting there beside my parents that first year, you want to show, and having my brothers who were watching and all my family, you want to show them that they had the right guy. Like, I'm the guy for this, and I'm going to do it. So it was cool to kind of prove those guys right, and kind of enjoy it with them. But a ton of emotion, relief. It's honestly, you black out a little bit. So it's a pretty cool. It was an awesome experience.
Very cool.
Yeah, and I guess you went again to the Leafs development camp, but now you went as their second round pick.
Went a little bit. Yeah, that was a little bit different that year. Had a little more attention, and they paid a little bit more attention to me. So that was a better experience that year.
Okay. Now, something happened to you that doesn't happen often to young players drafted, in the first couple of rounds. You got a call one day. And why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah. So I get traded in the OHL that year. I moved to Guelph. We kind of had a older team, more experienced team. So was going through that, and I had a dinner planned with the development guys in Toronto, and they were driving out to Guelph, and it was quite a bit of a snowstorm. And I just sent them a text saying, are we still on for tonight? And they said, yep, we're making the trip or whatever, and driving in the snow. And I'm just about to start getting ready, and my phone's buzzing again. And it was Kyle Dubas at the time, and get the call, and I'm like, is he coming? Like it's just supposed to be a casual dinner. We talk about hockey, we talk about my game, this, that, what I could work on. So I pick it up and said, hello. And He goes, "Hey, Sean, it's Kyle here. Just want to let you know you've been traded." And everything, like, what? It was like, it was pretty, it was dark. It was winter at the time, so it was dark. And I was like, okay, like, goes, "Yeah, you're going to LA. They're going to reach out to you. I just want to reach out to you first." I said, "Okay, perfect. I mean, I guess thanks for everything. Thanks for making a dream come true. That's it." It was pretty quick. It was pretty straight to the point, and it was fine. Then I get a call from someone in LA, and it was Mike Duda at the time. He was assistant GM, and he goes, "Hey, I want you to look out your window." And I'm like, "Hold on. First of all, I'm supposed to be meeting with the Leafs tonight. Is this guy outside on my driveway?" So I look out the window, and I just see snow, and I'm like, "Yeah, it's just nothing's out there." He goes, "You see that snow?" He goes, "You're not going to see much of that in LA." And I thought it was really cool of him to do that, because it kind of calmed me down and kind of was like, okay, like, that's awesome that it kind of made a joke like that, and called my family and just let them know, and then I ended up still meeting for dinner with those guys. So I got it.
Nice.
I mean, they made the drive out to Guelph, so we ended up having dinner, and yeah. But other than that, it was a new experience.
And after your last year of junior, you've got your NHL contract signed, your 3-year entry-level deal, and you've turned pro.
Yep.
Talk about the transition that you went through, going from an elite defenseman, offensive defenseman in the OHL to now, NHL camp, and then American League camp, and now starting the season in the American League.
So I heard a quote one time from somebody in hockey, and it was either, it's so tough to remember, but it's one that stuck with me. And it's one that in this game and in most aspects of life, you go from a group of common people, and you have to become the uncommon one, and you have to take the step up. And then once you do that, you go right back into a new group of common people who are all the same as you. And then you have to take the one step up. So you think about it in hockey. In my career, I was the common in AA, went to AAA, became right back into the mix of all the common, average guys. And then you become uncommon, and then you go to the OHL, and then you become uncommon, and then you kind of go to the AHL. And for me, it was, how do you become uncommon? Not faster, but how do you become uncommon consistently? And because you might be able to do it once, and then the next group, you're stuck. So for me, it was something I just relied on. And it was just, no matter what's going on, no matter what adversity I'm going through, be better than I was the day before. Whether that's 1%, whether that's 0.0001%, do what you have to do to take every single day and become better than the next day. And you feel that it's cool, because once you realize, like, you feel yourself become common in a group. You get on the ice with these American League players, these men, you're like, I'm no better than anyone out here right now. Like, these guys are all great players. So what can I do? So I realized, through all the adversity, through all the shit that's going on, you got to rely on what works, and that's hard work. Mm-hmm. You take every day and you learn and you work hard and you get better and you get better and you get better until you start to feel yourself on the ice, whether it's, in a game or in practice, you feel yourself, kind of standing out above the rest. And once you start to feel with that, you ride it and you keep going and you keep going, you keep going, and you build confidence by practicing and by working hard, and you rely on what works. So for me, that works. I don't know what other guys think, but for me, it was learning from every single person I meet, every conversation I have, every single guy I watch on the ice, working as hard as I can at things I need to work on, being brutally honest with yourself, because sometimes you got to be, and moving to the next. So I had to become uncommon in a group of really good hockey players. And obviously it gets tougher. It's only going to get tougher throughout your career.
Yep. And your first year in the American League, were you playing every night? What was your ice time like?
Yeah, so it was tough. There was a lot of good defensemen that year. I think there was three or four rookies that were all highly touted prospects, and I was kind of caught in the mix. But I was, no matter what, I was a rotation. So I was in and out of the lineup. I could have one of the best games of my life, and the next one I'd be sitting in the stands. So, I keep talking about experience because you can go through a bunch of things, but if you're not learning, it's pointless. And my experience of when I was in the OHL, what was I doing? I was not playing in my first year, but I was working harder than everybody else, longer than everybody else, and I was slowly getting better. So not playing, you have I don't want to say it's a blessing not to play, because you're not, you want to play. It's why you do all this is to play, to have fun. But when you're not playing, you don't have to rely so much on your body and kind of keeping fresh, but so you could work out a little harder than everybody else. So maybe when everybody was in the gym, I was able to lift heavier because I didn't have to worry about being sore the next day. I knew I didn't have a game. So I was taking those and I was trying to get stronger and kind of fit in, but I was getting scratched, and I ended up getting scratched. Almost maybe a little less than my first year in the OHL. And that's a tough feeling, especially because you go from being the man in the OHL, not the man, but like a better player in the OHL, playing in every situation, reliable every night, to right back to that common group of guys where you're not standing out at all and you're no better than anybody else.
And you find out you're not playing that night, and it can suck your soul right out of you.
Yeah, sometimes you find out that day and that night. Sometimes you're doing warm-ups and you find out after warm-ups. So it's a lot. Like that was obviously the rare time, but like even just the day of, it's no good feeling when you go to bed early, you're feeling fresh, and then you wake up in the morning, you don't know the lineup yet, go to the rink and you're not on it. So it's adversity, and it's never easy to see that. But if you look at it a different way and you try to put a positive spin on it, it's kind of what I've learned to do at this point. Even in those toughest times, like, what do? You rely on what you know and what you know works, and you put that positive spin on it.
I wonder too, Sean, do you feel like it helps you just not take playing for granted? Not that you ever really did, but sometimes it's like, if you're on a rotation, you're trying to make the most of those games. Like, these are my games.
Yeah.
I'm going to take these games because they're mine.
And it's unbelievable in this game too, because you got to do something to not stand out, but like, yeah, quite honestly, stand out. You gotta do something that makes everybody go like, you know what, he should be in the lineup. But at the same time, if you do too much, they're not going to want you in the lineup. So it's finding a perfect balance that's so slim, and it's, I don't know if it's like that in other sports, but in this game, it's a fine line of finding what you can do and what you can do to stand out without standing out too much. So,
well, the issue is you rush the puck and you move the puck, and if you quote unquote do too much of it, you end up running around, and he's running around too much, and a lot of times that comes from trying to do too much, and it takes some experience to say, okay, I can pinch. Okay, I got a lane, I can go. Okay, I better get rid of the puck right now because I don't want to cough it up on my blue line, right? And that takes some figuring out.
Yeah, finding that perfect balance of what you can do and what you can't do, because like you said, Adam, it's you don't take playing for granted. You don't take playing for granted, quite honestly. You want to stand out. You want to show you should be in every night, but to do that, you can't make too many mistakes. It's a fine line, but every single night you learn more, and every single game, every single practice. And I had a coach tell me, and I don't know if there's, guys or kids watching who are going through this, but when you're not playing, you got to take your practices as if they were games. And it was a former coach, and he basically I took every single practice I had, and we would do some battle drills, and I would quite frankly act like it was a game, and I would have to compete my heart out in practice just to get myself into game speed and just to prepare myself for those games.
Wow. Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about your second year pro and what that experience was like compared to your first.
This is an experience that's probably, hopefully, fingers crossed, is never going to happen again. It was the COVID season in the American League. And that was, personally, I took it as like such a learning year that it was almost as if we were just playing practices and not obviously their games, but you knew there was going to be no Calder Cup. There was going to be no championship. So I'm like, how can I use this season and not throw it away? Because I know a lot of guys were almost throwing it away. You're playing in a practice rink, and it's you feel how easy it is to just say, this season's, this is stupid. Like, I don't know.
This sucks. This sucks. We're playing on I just want to get home. I just want this over with.
Yeah. So it was, and I feel like how easy it could have been to do that. But I was lucky enough that we were playing out of our practice rink in El Segundo, and we had eyes of every single development guy we had on us. We had cameras at every angle, and I was able to dissect my game at a different level than before. And we weren't playing as many games. So it was, you're looking at, you have a lot of time in between games to work on it and see what you could have done better. And finally, towards the end of the year, you see things start clicking. And it was almost using every game as a practice and like learning from it and dissecting my game in a different way than I would have. And if you're kind of competing for, a Calder Cup and you're more focused on, let's win a hockey game. I was able to focus on like what I can do better and what I can build on as a player. So it was a different season. It was a little strange, and hopefully we don't, I ended up making a positive out of it, but at the same time, you want to play for something. You want to play to win.
I think the entire world's with you. We would do not want that to happen again. It was just the worst. Yeah. Now, Allan, is this a good time to kind of jump in and talk about how the relationship between you and Sean started? Is this around the time that you guys met?
Yeah, it was during this season.
Yeah.
So, Sean, I got to ask you about that. Your first introduction to Allan Walsh. What happened there? How did this all come together?
Yeah, it was Allan was representing a couple of my teammates, and I remember thinking at this point in my career, what my goals were and what my ambitions were, and I wanted to find someone who quite honestly matched them, and someone who had the mindset of, I want to be the best and I want to make it to the top, and someone who could help me get there, quite honest with you. So I met Allan. We had a few meetings, and right away I kind of knew that we'd make a good match together, and we were going to make this work.
I like that. and I got to ask you, Allan, because I know what your energy is. I know what your goals are. You're a passionate person. When you met Sean, what was your first impression, and how were you guys introduced in the first place?
I have somebody working with me for the last several years, and he brought up Sean's name, and a couple of players that I represent brought up Sean's name, and that's how we initially connected. And I think the first time we actually met together, it was a Zoom call with Sean and his mom and dad. Oh. And we all met together. And again, it was during COVID. You really couldn't meet face to face with anybody back then, right? You had no other option. That's how you were conducting business. And what impressed me from the very beginning was I saw Sean's fire. I saw his determination. I knew what he had already overcome and the adversity he'd faced. And I got to know him. We had some conversations, and I said to myself, this guy is going to make it. He has it. He has that fire. Nothing is going to stop him. And that's what that was my initial thoughts of Sean when we started getting to know each other.
And so, this relationship of the two of you kind of happens. And then Sean, you're coming up with a very exciting young team. Like you mentioned, you had 3 or 4 rookies on that team that were pretty great. You're trying to stand out with, a Quentin Byfield, on that team and how good he is. And there's so many other players in the LA system that, you've got an exciting, amazing young team here. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to ask this question for both of you. When did you feel like things really started to elevate to the point where it's like, I might see some game action here in the NHL? Was there a call? Was there a feeling that you guys got? How did that happen?
I mean, when you're playing in the American League, you think about it all the time. Yeah. And quite honestly, getting that out of your head is probably one of the hardest parts about the development and about playing in the American League, because you want it so bad, you want it so fast. So for myself, it was, and this is kind of when I met Allan, and what we've talked about is, it's, you want it so bad, but it's, and you hear it all the time. It's so hard to get to the NHL, but it's even harder to stay there. And I wanted to prepare myself for when I had my opportunity. I wanted to make the most of it. So there's one thing I can control, and it was that I can't control when I get called up. You work your hardest every day, and you want it to happen so bad. But when it happens, are you ready? Are you truly confident that you can make an impact and you deserve to be there? So that's what I did. I mean, I probably thought I was ready to get called up my first year, my first day, and I wanted it so bad. I was very fortunate where I was at the point, I was a 3rd-year pro, and I was confident in my abilities to show them that I wanted to play there and I can make an impact. And lucky enough, I ended up getting a call, and I had a couple of bounces along the way to get there, and I just tried to make the most of it, quite honestly with you. And I had a couple of good bounces in the game and kind of stuck.
So Sean and I we're having lunch, and I'm sitting at the restaurant near the practice rink, and I get a text from Sean. Hey, I was walking outside, and they're calling me back in. I'm going to be a little bit late. Sorry. And no problem for me. I'm just on my phone answering emails, returning texts, hanging out. And Sean walks into the restaurant maybe, 15, 20 minutes after we were supposed to meet. And he's got a big smile on his face, and he sits down and he looks at me and he says, I just got called up.
Oh, get out. Really?
Yeah.
How was that for timing?
Yeah. It was pretty cool. I remember I did all my stuff at the rink. I even stayed a little longer because I knew we had a lunch, and I timed it perfectly. And I'm leaving the rink, and I get a call, and it was saying you got to come back. I said, can we meet tomorrow? It was with the D coach. So I'm like, can we do it tomorrow? Is it just some video? And they said, no, you're going to want to come back right now. And I'm like, am I in trouble? Did I do something? And then as I got there, it turned out it wasn't with the D coach. It was with Rob Blake. So it was pretty cool that we were just meeting for lunch before that or after that happened.
I gotta ask you, as a defenseman yourself, when you have a meeting with Rob Blake, one of the best ever, is that intimidating?
I mean, in the beginning it was, and then you realize how nice he's a nice guy, and he wants the best for you. You guys are all on the same team here, so it's pretty cool that we're part of the same family now, and to have a guy like that on your side is special. Quite honest with you.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty darn cool that Rob Blake is a GM there. It's just amazing. Yeah. Allan?
So one thing I always want to ask, and I was I was watching it with my own right in front of me. Tell us about your first NHL game and what that experience was about, family and what their reaction was and how that all went down.
Yeah, quite honestly, I blacked out from the morning till night. I don't remember anything. I'm just kidding.
We wouldn't blame
I'm
you.
just kidding. No, it was, that experience is, you don't feel those nerves. Like you feel those nerves very, very few times in your career. And I probably had nerves like that in my first OHL game. And then, I've had dreams of myself walking out of the tunnel. And when it's happening, it's almost like, is this a dream? And it was when I was walking out on the ice and getting on the ice and kind of looking around, and you're sitting there during the national anthem and you're like, this is happening. Like, this is, like I said, you're almost having those mini flashbacks of like, I've worked my entire life for this moment, and it's happening right now. So it's very little time to enjoy it. And I'm lucky enough that I kind of thought about that in those moments, and I got a chance to kind of enjoy it. But the first few shifts, you don't feel like yourself. You feel like everything's on edge and pins and needles and this, that. But once you sit down, you're sweating a little, and you realize that you're playing a game of hockey that you've played forever. It's, it's so fun. And you can't, there's no other way to put it other than if you enjoy it. And I was lucky enough that I did. And you realize that it's just hockey, that you'll have fun, and that's why you do it, right? It's a game at the end of the day. And I was lucky enough to have a couple good bounces and a great experience my first game.
Yes, you did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's weird. You look back and now I think like, hey, like it went pretty well, but we ended up at the time we lost 6-2, and I was pretty pissed off after the game because you want to come in and you want to win. So it was shitty at the time, but it's you look back now, and I ended up doing, I scored a goal, which is cool. So it was a good experience.
Was your family there?
Yeah. It's special to have them along for the entire ride. So it was nice to have them there too.
Yeah, there was mom and dad, two brothers were there.
Yeah.
Two brothers, your girlfriend.
Yeah, Sadie.
That was quite the crew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was lucky. I have a good support group around me.
Allan, for you got a client that comes in and plays their first game. You're sitting next to the family. Do you say anything to them before the game starts?
Several times we, like Sean's family and I, would go out before the game and grab something to eat before the game. And, Sean's family, they're incredibly close. They're wonderful people. I have a great relationship with mom and dad. You sit there and you have some great conversations, and there's certainly a little bit of nerves, but they are really down to earth. And sometimes sitting next to parents while they're watching their son play is a nerve-wracking experience. I sat next to a mom once whose son was a goalie, and my shins were black and blue because every time he made a kick save, she kicked me in the shins.
Amazing.
I said to the dad, for the third period, you want to change seats?
You probably knew. Wow.
But it's great. It just feels very, very natural and very comfortable. And they go there, they show their support. There's a lot of love there. And they're incredibly proud of everything he accomplishes.
I can bet. I imagine they are.
Yeah.
And so, Sean, the thing is that it's one thing to play an NHL game. Like I think a friend of our show at the network, a guy named Ken Reed, wrote a book on One Night Only. The players that played one game in the NHL and where they are now. How do you get to game 2? How do you get to game 3? And how do you get to game 20? And, to the point where you're playing every night?
Yeah. So it's funny because when you start, it's day by day, and you grow up and you hate tryouts. You really, every year tryouts come along, you're like, oh, I hate this. Like, you feel like the eye's on you, and I just want I want to get to playing normal games. But quite frankly, it was a tryout, and every single game, every single shift was a tryout, and that's how it felt for me my first few. And it was, I honestly don't remember when it hit me, but somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking so much about a tryout, and I just thought more about the team and what we're going to do to win. And it was a cool feeling, because you kind of feel like you're on the team and you're a part of the team. And that was because I remember when it happened. I don't remember when along the way it was, how many games in, but I remember just thinking about what I can do that night. Like, what are we going to do to win? Like this, that, and talking to guys and having more confidence around the dressing room. And once you kind of fall into that aspect, it makes things a lot easier. You get more comfortable. And when you're comfortable, you're confident, and it's pretty cool. So that was special.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And any player coming into the league the way Sean did, you don't know if after 7 games or 8 games, there's an injury, a player gets healthy. Hey, you're going back to the American League now. Like, it could happen at any time. Mm-hmm. And you're really living your life on pins and needles, going day by day. And, I watched Sean get more comfortable and more confident. And it was like, hey, anytime I talked to him or saw him, and I went to a lot of games this year where I saw Sean play, I watched carefully little things like how calm he was carrying the puck, how when he had pressure, he didn't just what a lot of young D do and just get rid of it, cough it up, turn it over. There was a lot of maturity in his game for a player playing his first NHL season, and getting called up at around the 20 game mark, going on to play 64 games in the NHL, many games leading his team in ice time, leading the team in ice time, both in the regular season and the playoffs, is remarkable.
Yeah, it's funny we talk about this. Like, it gets better along the way, but there's always a little bit that it stays in your head, and you're just like, you're still focused on, showing up early, working hard, and you never get truly comfortable or relaxed, like I say, but it gets better. And like Allan says, it shows up on the ice, that comfort level.
Well, you want to see a player who wants to stay in the NHL. There was a point in time, Sean, where you fought 4 games in a row. And I was like, this guy's got to stop dropping the gloves and fighting, but it was just like, he was so into winning. That competitiveness inside him had come out. And it's like, I'll do anything that it takes to stay here. And if I got to drop the gloves and fight somebody, I'll do that. And a couple of times you drop the gloves with legitimate heavyweights, and I'm watching the game and I'm doing this because I can barely watch, what's going to happen. But you were fearless out there, and it made an impression on everybody.
It's hard to imagine you pissed off, Sean. I'm not going to lie. I know you got to be competitive to make the NHL, but just in this interview, you just don't. You seem like a very calm, collected guy. So I know you would do anything, but it's just imagining you going, yeah, let's go. I can't imagine it. It's hard. It's hard to imagine.
You're catching me at a good time.
Yeah. If I was on the wrong side of a card game with you, let's say we're playing and I'm up, are you going to have a problem with that?
Yeah, that's a little bit of fire. No, most of it comes out on the ice. I'm usually pretty relaxed.
Amazing.
Yeah. Well, I have one last question, and I always want to know this, and I think people do as well. When you were growing up, was there an NHL player that you looked up to and idolized, and what that meant to you along your journey?
Yeah, there was 2, quite honestly. There was Erik Karlsson. He was kind of someone that I looked up to, and then there's Drew Doughty, who I'm lucky enough to have played with this year. So Drew knows that he doesn't let me hear the end of it. He's always on me, and he keeps me on my toes, that guy. So it's fun to play with him, and kind of learn from him. And, you know, when he wasn't playing, if he saw something, he would let me know. And lucky to play with him.
And you get to play against Eric all the time now.
Yeah, I played Eric a few times. I remember there was one moment that was kind of like, I don't want to say it was my welcome to the NHL moment, but it was a moment that like I probably won't forget. It was a 3-on-3 overtime, and I was lined up on one end of the starting overtime and he was on the other, and we're looking across, and I don't know if we made eye contact or I was just looking at him, but I was like, that's Erik Karlsson right there. And I'm about to line up against him. So that was kind of realizing like, hey, like this is pretty cool. I'm here. Like, let's do this now. And that was a good moment.
Yeah. And then you slashed him in the back of the leg.
Yeah. Usually like that.
Awesome. You do what you got to do.
I got to do what I got to do. Yeah. It was like that 1 second. And then as soon as the puck dropped, it was everything comes to the window. I'm going to kill this guy.
Yeah. Hey, Sean, thank you very much for your time. You've been very generous. It's great to have you on. We'll be getting lunch next week, and we'll catch up face to face. And it's you have an incredible story, and you've overcome a lot already. It's a great privilege to be working with you and your whole family, and just thank you for your time here today.
No, thank you, Allan. Thanks, Adam. It's great to talk to you guys. It was a good laugh, and it's always nice to share those things. It's what I've learned, and I know I'm still young, but I still have some experiences that, hey, if the right person hears it, it might help them along the way. So thanks for having me on the show, guys.
Thank you.
This has been Agent Provocateur with Allan Walsh and Adam Wylde. Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook. Follow Allan Walsh on Twitter @WalshA. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts by searching Agent Provocateur and hitting the subscribe button. YouTube.com/SDPN.